What is biodynamic wine?
How the sun, the stars, the moon affect the rhythms of nature. Regenerative farming also incorporates animals and no-till farming. It's hard for small farmers to start. The whole system is working against them. I want wines that's farmed well.
People that get stomach aches with wine, they don't get stomach aches with yours.
A lot of wine is made with a lot of additives, and all the wines are bottled unfined and unfiltered. A lot of big corporations are going to use a product like Velcorin. It's very, very toxic. So, of course, our wines definitely don't have any of that.
Welcome to the Vitalist podcast, where healing meets wonder. This is your space to gain transformative knowledge, deepen your mind-body connection, and awaken your human spirit. If you're ready to connect with your innate potential, embrace life's challenges, and expand what you believe is possible, this is the place. Get ready to slow down, be moved, and live like a true vitalist. Alice Anderson, welcome to the Vitalist podcast. I'm Keiko, and I'm so excited to have you as a guest here. We are big fans of your wine, and I bring them to every dinner party, and it just blows people's minds. So I want to get into what's behind the wine, what goes into the wine, because I explain it, and I probably do a disservice. And yeah, and it's weird. Are the earliest memories of you being inspired with just farming in general or making wine? Like, take me back a little bit. When did this first start?
Well, my mom has always been a wine label designer. So she's, since, when I was little, before I was born, actually, she's created wine labels, wine packaging for all of, the big grocery store brands that but we weren't really like a wine drinking household, really. It was kind of like my mom was just doing her best trying to raise us crazy little kids. And there wasn't a huge community around wine, but something, of course, moms always know. I was really into riding horses growing up and raising animals. So although, it had nothing, agriculture had no background in my family, my parents were always incredibly supportive of whatever crazy thing I wanted to do. So dropped me off at the barn every single day, took me to go feed all my animals, and I showed them at fair and all that sort of thing. So that was really where agriculture or the idea of farming kind of started. And then I ended up going to Cal Poly for university. And of course, you have to decide what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're 16 or 17, which is just crazy. And I ended up going in as a general agriculture major. And yeah, long story short, I ended up kind of taking a class in intro to winemaking and doing a little job shadow, and ended up changing my major to enology and viticulture, and haven't really looked back.
Wow. So that led you into the wine industry. And then when did you open Amevive?
So I started Amevive in 2019. That was my first vintage. And that's also when we started farming our first kind of main vineyard, which is Ibarra Young. So now we have 3 vineyards. Yeah, it's wild.
Wow. And then how many acres? Because when I first learned about you, I think you were around 10, 12 acres, but I feel like you've expanded that.
Yeah. So Ibarra Young is 10 acres. And then we have another property that we live on now, which is the dream, my dream. That's another 10 acres with about 8 or maybe 12 acres, about 8 acres of vineyards planted. And that's where we have our sheep and our chickens full time. And then we have another 3 acres that we lease, and they're all kind of within a 5-minute drive triangle of each other, which is also my dream.
Wow. So you're living in close proximity to working with the land. I mean, how do you separate, your personal life between work life when it's so close in proximity? Or is it just so natural to you?
If your work is your hobby is your work, it all feels really natural. And for me, I love every aspect of what I do, the variety of it, the physical nature of it, working with your hands, the creativity side, everything. I feel every second of my day with tinkering or weeding or, growing my food or feeding the animals or, planting trees or, I don't know, all the little stuff that is fun and extracurricular that kind of goes alongside the style of farming we do. That's not just grapes,
Yeah, it goes beyond wine. I understand the ecosystem you've created, which I really want to get into because, most people know about organic or the natural movement, but I would love for you to speak, and we don't have to get into the scientific details, but paint us a picture of your wine practices on the growing side, but then also I kind of want to get into the processing side too. Like, what is biodynamic wine to you?
Well, your last question, what is biodynamics and what is biodynamic wine? So I like to think of biodynamics as kind of this combination of like standard organic farming, but also with this aspect of how the celestial bodies affect nature. And the kind of principles of biodynamic farming are, creating soil organic matter, also, not treating each farm system the same. There's no prescription. You have to like absorb each farm system, learn it, be more reactive towards it than, prescriptive towards it. But also beyond that, using, thinking about how the sun, the stars, the moon affect the rhythms of nature. So yeah, that's biodynamics. For me, we do, of course, principles of biodynamics in the farming aspect, especially talking about our biodynamic composts. We're not certified Demeter by any means. We have done all of the preparations, but not in any sort of like rigorous manner. But something that we are quite rigorous about is doing the proper biodynamic preps in our compost, which is 502 through 507. So it's essentially using herbs to kind of harness the energies and make our compost more powerful. But beyond biodynamics, like what we really love is this term regenerative farming, regenerative agriculture. So using these, basically the whole idea is to create this sort of farm system that works within itself. So biodynamics also follows that principle, but regenerative farming kind of also incorporates animals and no-till farming and planting hedgerows and pollinator rows and thinking about every aspect of what every sort of plant and animal needs from top to bottom. So everything from the microbes in the soil to the earthworms to the birds to the microfauna to the macrofauna to everything that works within the food chain for it to be there in one closed system. And it's kind of like closed. So we're trying not to bring as many outside sources as possible. We're trying to like make our own compost, reuse our waste, have this nutrient cycling system that works organically.
I don't know if there's a time in history or if it was purely financial, but where did we get away from this type of regenerative farming?
Really probably political. And I feel like, Europe still has a bit of a tradition with kind of small scale, more regenerative farming. And it's because government subsidizes small farmers a little bit more. And the American government, 50, 60 years ago, started really subsidizing like large scale farms. And it became this big agricultural industry. So you see more monocrops and like only one thing growing in hundreds of thousands of acres. And then, and it hasn't changed. So it's been a bit of an uphill battle. It's hard for small farmers to start because the whole system is working against them. So that's why you don't see this style of farming too often. And it also takes a very specific person that enjoys a bit of the grunt work, a bit of working with your hands. You have to be intuitive. And, it comes very natural for me, but I've learned that it doesn't necessarily come natural for everybody, and that's okay. But, when you take away the big machines and the big synthetic chemical companies, you have to be a little bit more creative and kind of lean into listening more than, thinking about it like,
Yeah, a flow chart or some data table.
Exactly.
Take me into the intuitive side of farming. I mean, is this something you learn in school? Is this experiential? Like it just comes with time?
I mean, that for me, that's one of the joys of farming is you never know all the answers. And that's what keeps it exciting to me. Every season is so different. And the more growing seasons you have, the more tricks you learn and the more you have in your tool belt to apply in the future. So yeah, I mean, every morning I go out, walk around, observe what's going on and react. Of course, there's some sort of like game plan or whatever, some sort of like large program in the year, the season, that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it's about, for me, the style of farming I do, it's about observing and then reacting. But in school, we learn the basics of how to make money in this business, really, I think is what I've boiled it down to, which is fair. I mean, a lot of people that go into winemaking, which is it's a creative venture, a lot of the more creative winemakers don't necessarily like think of their schooling as extremely pivotal, but I don't think I really share that same sentiment. I definitely value my education. You learn, how things can go wrong, and you learn the science behind it all, which all matters in this more like natural farming, natural winemaking that I do. It gives me a foundation, really.
Take me into, I love how you said there's reactive or responsive, and then there's the prescriptive practices. But how do you just delicately and subtly distinguish, what is the monocropping versus how you do things? And how can people start to look for that when they are sourcing wine or buying wine? Like, do you read the website? What are like the telltale things?
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because as we all know, there's so much greenwashing in this business and farming in general. And there's a lot of amazing marketing that unfortunately trumps what the good real people are doing. And I struggle with it too. There's no right answer, but to tackle your last question, which is how do people find like good sources of wine? I always say like go to your wine shop, go talk to somebody that has completely entrenched themselves in wine, because they're going to lead you in the right direction. And go in with a question that says like, I care about my body. I care about the natural world. I want wine that's grown with intention first. And that doesn't mean natural wine always. We want wine that's grown ethically and not necessarily just this fun marketing thing that somebody's slapped a cutesy label on and they're calling it natural wine, And I'm still training myself to do this also. It's the classic when you are going to a nice restaurant that has a sommelier and they come and ask you what do you want to drink today? I love to talk to the sommelier, even though, of course, my whole life is wine. I love to experience what somebody else is interested in. And that's the beauty in all of this. And I used to always say, they say, what type of wine do you want to drink? And I say, oh, I like wines with lots of acidity, tension, and I used to say that, but I'm shifting what I say to now be, I want wines that's farmed well, first and foremost. I want wine that is often like a grower producer or a small project. And those are often the wines that are the most special. Big companies can, it's easy for them to take a big swath of land, machine harvest it, throw it on a tank, and put a cute label on it. And there can be a lot more from your beverage than that.
Okay, I want to get into, you obviously have a taste and a palate for wine. So could you tell, like very instinctually, the difference if I were to just like blind taste test you, a biodynamic regenerative wine versus just something I would pick up at the grocery store?
I'd like to think I'd be able to. It's not something that you can. For me, I explain it more as like an energy. There's a different energy to the wine than a taste, really. But I would definitely like to think that I could pick out the difference of something that's farmed well, made with like true hands versus, something that's just from the classic grocery store. Yeah, certainly. I'm getting more confident in my approach. Yeah, I definitely I can taste the difference.
And it's so beautiful because the way I discovered you is I went to our local wine shop.
Yeah, cool.
And so and you were doing a tasting that night. So we got to experience your wine and I knew nothing about it. So I was going in blind, just thinking it was a natural wine, have some fun. And it blew my mind. And like just the feeling of your wine in my body, I was like, what is this? Like, I need to know more. And I couldn't even put words to it. I feel like that's what your wine is. You can't articulate the feeling, but it feels something so familiar and almost medicinal. Like when I drink your wine, I almost feel like it is earth medicine or it's something from nature. And I try to communicate that to my friends and family. But there is something really special about your wine. So I kind of want to get into, are there any healing modalities or healing essences in your wine? Because people that get stomach aches with wine, they don't get stomach aches with yours. And they feel good with your wine. And I know it because I'm in the health profession. I am probably the only doctor that is telling people to drink wine, your wine specifically. But what is it about your wine? Like, are there some nuances that we don't know that are allowing it to just absorb into the body better?
Scientifically, a lot of wine is made with a lot of additives. And mine has none of those things. So, and oftentimes these additives they might give a sort of like flavor profile, but they aren't necessarily like naturally things that we metabolize. So even thinking about like new oak, we might like the idea of new oak, but it doesn't necessarily mean that our body is used to, having oak extract absorbed. So having all of these things totally removed make Amevive, the beverage, just purely like fermented grape juice. I mean, I can't really explain it. I'm really happy that you and of course others have expressed that, but I want to drink wine that makes me feel good too. So I think sometimes the wine world is focused also on this, like the wine needs to be 14.5% alcohol for it to be wine. And I totally disregard that. I don't think that at all. I think you can get a lot of energy, a lot of depth, a lot of flavor in wines that happen to have lower alcohol. And, because I'm not adding anything to my wines, I tend to pick the grapes a little bit earlier. So I have this natural acidity still left in the grape. So I don't, a lot of wineries were going to add acid back. So you have a lot of, sugar. And then as your grape ripens, you increase sugar and you decrease acidity. So I try to find it at the very perfect balance where I have enough natural acidity in the grape where I don't have to add anything. But that often means the sugars are a little bit lower. So the wines tend to be like 12, 13% alcohol rather than 14, 15% alcohol, which could make a difference for how the wine feels in your body also.
Tell me about the life cycle of, I kind of want people to have a better picture of how you process the wine. Because is that very different than how a corporate winemaker might do things?
Sure. In some ways it's similar, in some ways it's different, right? It's all made, it starts as grapes and then it goes into some sort of fermenter, some sort of area for the primary fermentation. And then they're all aged typically in barrels. Some wines aged in tank for big corporate wineries, but for the most part, everything's aged in barrel. I would say like for us where things change a little bit, or a lot of it, is like we're truly growing our own grapes. So we are up at 2 a.m. with the crews picking our grapes, driving the tractors, like I say, put the grapes in the bins. So we're with a team of people that I work with throughout the year. And sometimes it's 2 a.m., sometimes it's 4 a.m., sometimes it's dusk. And then, we finish that. That usually takes 2 to 4 hours for 1 to 2 tons. And then we bring that all into the winery, and, it's a hands-on processing. So sometimes the wine, if it's red wine, gets stepped on with our feet. Even white wine sometimes gets stepped on with our feet. So it's a really tactical, like emotional experience throughout the fermentation that I don't think, the big corporate winery is going to have. They're going to have machines that do all this sort of stuff. And I'm much more of a feeler, both grower and winemaker. So it's impossible for me to just say, okay, go punch down that tank. Like I have to feel it and decide how long to punch it down for. One of the things that makes it hard for me to delegate for somebody else to help me, but that's also the beauty in the kind of wines that I make. Also, there is this really personal touch to them. And then so after the primary fermentation, everything gets pressed. So we do use like a big press like any normal winery would. And then the winery that we're in has an amazing gravity. The winery's multi-level. So we have a very easy gravity setup. So the wines go to their final resting place, which is in barrel via gravity, which is kind of special. So a big winery would typically use a pump. It's quite noisy. It's, a lot for the wine to handle. But for us, the natural transfer into barrel is very calm, very meditative, actually silent, unless there's music playing, which is also an amazing ambiance. And then, so the wines stay in barrel for 8 months to 18 months, depending on the wine. And then they're racked up to tank is what we call it. So I use inert gas to basically reverse pressure the barrel and moves the wine up to tank, its final blend. And that's it. Occasionally I use a little bit of sulfur to keep everything together, but very, very modest amounts of sulfur in the grand scheme of winemaking and wine additives. And that's it. And all the wines are bottled, unfined and unfiltered. And of course, without anything crazy, like a lot of big corporations are going to use a product like Velcorin, which is essentially a dose that goes in at the bottling line. It has a very, very quick half-life. So it degrades very quickly, but it's very, very toxic. Like all of these big wineries use this product. And essentially, like, you can't drink the wine within the first 2 days of bottling. Otherwise, you're exposing yourself to Velcorin. And essentially, it just zaps absolutely everything in the bottle when it goes to bottle. And it's not just wine that uses this, like Odwalla, like all these packaged juices, like Naked, Coca-Cola, all of these companies are using this product that essentially completely sterilizes their product before it goes into the hands of consumers.
And that product, it is toxic, so it stays in the product.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not exactly sure the science behind all of it, but somebody with an somebody that got more than a, B- in organic chemistry can really describe all of these things.
Velcorin. Okay, I'm going to look into that.
Yeah. So of course our wines definitely don't have any of that. And there's many wines, oftentimes these smaller producers and these more high-end wines, don't have any of that. They use, we use different kinds of science like knowledge to, make sure that that we're, putting something in the bottle that we can trust for the longevity of whatever we expect the lifetime of our wine to be.
I've never seen Velcorin on an ingredient in a wine.
No, yeah, that's the thing, right? Ingredients aren't necessary, or they're not mandated in the US.
Wow.
So I do believe they're mandated in Europe now.
I kind of want to go a little deeper if you can, and it might be hard to explain, but when you are like crushing the grapes with your feet or using your hands to feel the grapes, like how do you know? Like, oh, this wine, like I'm sure it's an impossible question, but what are you feeling like from a sensory perspective?
It all just depends on the different phase of fermentation. So at the very beginning, I use a lot of whole cluster in my red wine fermentation. So I'm not removing the stem from the grapes at all. So you get more herbal, more savory, more floral components often. And at the very beginning of fermentation, when I'm stepping on it, I don't want to like completely pulverize it. And this is a stylistic choice. This is something that everyone does differently. So I just want enough juice to protect and kind of remove the oxygen exposure from the grapes, but not enough to like make it soup in a fermenter. So that, like, as it starts to ferment, then I start to consider temperature and like the feeling of temperature and how I'm, how I'm doing a movement is what I say, a pump over, a punch down, or a foot tread. So if the ferment is getting quite warm, I might do a more aerative movement to cool down the ferment a little bit. If it's still feeling really cold and the yeast, I want the yeast to be a little more excited, I might put the ferment in the sun to get a little bit more warmth. Yeah, I mean, every grape feels a little bit different. Like Gamay it's a little more, I mean, slimy's not the most romantic word, but like it's a little more slimy than Grenache. Like Grenache feels firm and a little more pure, I guess. Like Syrah feels quite pure. It's not very slimy. Yeah. So, I mean, every variety has its own expressions also.
I'm curious too, when you are going into like the tasting, how do you know when a wine is like, this is the moment, it's done?
Sometimes you don't know, and that's okay. It can be a feeling. But oftentimes for red wines, like when I'm tasting and getting ready to press, that's the biggest decision in red wine making, is how long on skins your wine is going to be on. It depends on the variety a little bit, but for me, I'm waiting for the tannin to get a little bit softer. Like it gets almost sweeter before, like right when it's ready. And I often like wait for that and then press the next day. So I'm not always going to capture, like I want to make sure that it doesn't get even better. So oftentimes I wait for that one more day for the juice to feel a little bit ready. That's kind of my own personal trigger. And I think every winemaker has their own version of how they find that or achieve that.
Wow. I feel like you're working so much with like learning when to step in, learning when to not touch, and like have a little restraint in it. Do you find there's more of that on like the farming and growing of the vineyards, or more in the production side of like bringing the wine to the bottle?
I mean, both. There's definitely like guiding in the farming side and learning that, nature is truly resilient. It's amazing. Nature will bounce back. And, good things take time. I say, like, nature takes time. Anytime you change your farming, it takes a few years for everything to catch up. And that's normal. So you have to wait and have that knowledge that everything will probably work out. And in the winery, I mean, yeah, kind of same thing. I think some of my best wines have come by accident, and it's not something that I've planned for. And yeah, honestly, and it's changed the way I've made wine. For example, in 2021, my Marsanne, which is one of my favorite wines that I make from the old vines, it didn't finish its primary fermentation. So the yeast didn't finish metabolizing the sugars by the time I normally bottled it. So, which was back in 2021 or 2022, it was on a 10-month barrel aging program. There was still sugar in the wine. So, I didn't bottle it. Of course, I'm not going to filter. And I want the wine to be stable. And it was really cloudy. So I just waited. I waited another 6 months, and the wine went dry slowly, naturally. So it took probably 15 months for the wine to finish its sugars rather than, a couple weeks, which sometimes it happens. And that became my new favorite expression of the grape variety. So now with all of my Marsanne, I leave it in this fully oxidized form. Even if it has already finished its primary fermentation, I leave it without sulfur for 18 months in barrel. And it gets this beautiful, like floral, honeyed, open expression that, is exciting to me. And I think that that's why people, like me, these smaller wineries, or often winemaker-owned wineries, which I think makes a difference. Winemaker-owned wineries, I think, often make the most profound wines because you don't have to make wines for anyone else. There's not another judge of your creativity. It's just purely me. Like, I don't have to meet the needs of anyone else or the demands of any other, marketing person asking me for the wine at a specific time. I don't have to meet any of these demands. I can really be more intuitive and listen to what's going on in the cellar and tell the story of what happens, which is its own version and different, interesting to me. And, of course, not everything we make is profound or crazy, but some of these accidents really, really, lead to amazing things.
They do. And it's trusting those accidents,
Exactly. And it doesn't necessarily come naturally. And I forget who taught me that or who told me this originally, but it was another very dogmatic natural winemaker. And they always said, like, if it tastes bad, just wait. Like, don't throw it away. Just wait, because oftentimes it gets better. And not every instance has that proven correct to me, but a lot of times it does. If something tastes a little bit off right now or weird or not going the right path, give it 6 months in the barrel to, sort itself out. There's a lot of nature that's working and moving and grooving and changing things around. And sometimes all of a sudden it jives.
I'm also curious about your wine in a way that, what is the reaction, or I guess, what is the response or the story you want people to experience when they sip your wine? What's the intention behind it?
Yeah, I'm definitely not expecting everyone to have a profound emotional experience. But for me, it's simple. Like, it's just to enjoy it. Like, does it make you happy? Does it make you feel alive? Does it make you feel joyous? That's it. I'm not necessarily expecting everyone to be a wino and be interested in the farming and, and everything that goes into it. And if they are, that's special. Like, we feel the same way and we can connect further on it. But if we want people to enjoy, our product, we can't be. So I don't think we can be so, I don't know. You're going to feel this, that sort of thing about it, I guess.
Well, it definitely woke something up in me. And I feel like I drink wine differently because of the experience I had with your wine. So I thank you for that. So you are currently, I think, pretty sold out on your wine.
Yeah.
So where do you source wine when you run out of wine?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. All my friends are doing amazing things. So locally, my amazing farming, the people I love farming side by side with, like Scar of the Sea, Lady of the Sunshine, they truly treat the world amazingly. They're just a little bit more north of us. Tablas Creek is a really good example of a larger corporation truly farming well.
So take me to the future a little bit. Where do you see the evolution of this type of farming going? Do you find that like the world is going to start balancing and we're going to get more farmers like you?
Yeah, I really hope so. I hope to be a little bit of an inspiration to people that are curious in this style of farming, not only just in like the physical and energy beneficial ways of doing it, but I don't come from any sort of like financial background or anything. I started everything with $8,000. Like that's it. And it's all just grown really organically. So, still no loans or anything like that. And it's just I hope to inspire people that maybe don't come from large amounts of money, that they can do it with a lot of grit and hard work and creativity and thoughtful planning. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in the wine space. It can be in, the conscious animal farming space, growing flowers, growing vegetables. Like start small, create a community, be vocal about it. And hopefully, there is a trend for this style of farming to, spread a little bit. I did hear, I'm not so entrenched in the news, but I think the government did just pass $1 billion regenerative agriculture bill in some sort. I haven't made myself familiar with it, but it's increasing, and hopefully even these bigger farmers start to shift away, start to see the problems of this monoculture style of farming and start approaching more of this forestry mentality and realize that you can have a much healthier landscape, a much more nutritious product by caring for the soil, ultimately, is what it all comes down to.
I feel like they are, and it might be a slow movement, but I feel like a lot of people are waking up to this. And people want regenerative things. We want our body to regenerate. We want to live a long and gracefully aging life. So I feel like your wine is a great place for this to start. I appreciate your time and just this absolute masterclass in wine. And thank you for speaking to like the emotional and the sensory side of things, because I feel like that's what makes your wine so unique, and it makes you unique.
Thank you so much.
So yes.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure chatting. And
yes. Where can people find you? Do you do tastings at your winery yet or not yet?
Not really, but I really try to host people when I can. So we don't have any sort of like formal tasting, that sort of thing, but just because I'm not necessarily inspired by the industry of the tasting room, I'm more inspired by introducing people to the farm and the ecosystem and, introducing people to wine that way. So it's always more of like a farm tour with, a couple of glasses of wine and an introduction to the land and a hangout more than any sort of like industrial, this is wine 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like that is not my style. So I do try to host people when I can. So I always say like, send me an email. But other than that, you can find the wines online. So we ship amevivewine.com, AMEVIVE wine.com. You can find us there. You can find us in your local wine shops in Arizona. We have distribution in many states. So yeah, chances are we are in your state, Georgia, New York, Colorado, the Carolinas, New Mexico, Arizona, of course, Tennessee, Knoxville. So some global too. So France, Sweden, Ontario. So lots of places you can find it. If you're in one of those states and you have a favorite wine store, like chances are they've heard of us or they might have the wine. If not, they can probably find it.
Great. And your Instagram's great too. I follow your Instagram, so I learn a lot. It's not just pretty pictures too. Like I actually learn. I'm like, oh.
Awesome. Yeah, the Instagram is fun. Like the story, I feel like I'm always posting stories. That's truly where you get like the good candid content because it's very finite. So yeah, the stories are the gold, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, is there anything our community or I personally can do for you?
No, just keep enjoying the good stuff and yeah, thank you.
All right. Alice, thank you so much. You're such a pleasure and such a breath of fresh air.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, and it was great to chat.
If you liked this episode, share it with a friend. For more conversations filled with awe and wonder, be sure to subscribe to the Vitalist podcasts. Till next time.